All right, here we go. Welcome to the Average Australian podcast. You can find us at www.theaverageaustralian.com. I am Chad Tondu. With me is Eden. How are you, sir?
Very well, very well. Our first ever video podcast.
Yep, first ever. Slight technical difficulties, but we're here now. So
We're on the air, we're live, ready to go.
Yes. So, okay, well, this one's basically about the PlayStation meeting that happened earlier this morning. I guess first we can talk about the first announcement, which is a PlayStation Slim. So, what's your thoughts about that as a whole?
Well, I think the PlayStation Slim was just a no-brainer. Like, it was already kind of out in the wild. People already sort of knew that it was coming. I think there was even some unboxing videos and things like that that had happened over the last week or so. So I think that was pretty much a known quantity and a no-brainer, really. Just they had to kind of get it out the way. And I think there's nothing much really to talk about that. It's PlayStation. You know there's going to be a Slim model eventually. That's just what they do. It's the new Slim. End of story. Done.
But don't you think, do you think it's purely a financial decision? Because if you look at it from a consumer point of view, I don't understand the point of it. Like, it's 2 months,
Slim.
2.5 months. Yeah, the Slim. Like, what's the point of it? Is it just purely because it's cheaper to make now, or is that it?
I think that's just the PlayStation history. You've always seen, like, you know, with the PlayStation, even the PlayStation 1, they did like a slim version of it in the end, and then PlayStation 2, they slimmed it a couple of times. There were revisions, and then they even did it with the PS3. I think it's just the technology changes, and the chips get smaller and things, and they repackage it. And I think the Slim's just a no-brainer. It always happens.
It's a little unique this time, though, because we've got this upgraded console coming in 2.5 months.
That's the interesting bit. And that's what everybody, or the PlayStation 4 Pro, as it's called, that's what everybody wants to talk about. The Slim, even if they weren't doing the Neo, you're always going to get a Slim.
Yeah,
anyway.
But who's buying the Slim right now? Like, who's going to buy it in the next 2.5 months?
So this is where it gets interesting. I don't know, and I guess that's why we need to talk about the Pro first and have a look at what the Pro is all about, and I think that might answer some questions. But so I guess that was the main topic of the evening, and that's what everybody wanted to see, the Neo, or as it's now known, the Pro. So that was the big news. So what did you think of that?
The Pro, I thought the conference itself was a little long. It was a bit weird that, like, it's hard to show graphical improvement when you're watching through Twitch. Like, you're not there, you can't see the TV, you can't see the difference. So, like, in terms of that, it's very difficult. It's like when they first showed virtual reality, like people with the headsets on. It's like, okay, cool, but I need to see it.
That's right. Yeah, look, and that was one. And just, with the conference as a whole, I thought it was a bit weird. I thought it was a bit flat and it was a bit subdued, and it wasn't what I was expecting at all. I thought it was sort of going to be Sony at their best, sort of, throwing it down and saying, here's the Neo, here's what you've been waiting for, here's 4K, check it out. But it was really kind of flat and subdued from Sony, and not what I expected at all.
I wrote the article about how Sony lately have been doing the counter-attack, the knockout punch, but this time they've gone first, and so they're, like, setting the tone, so to speak. And it's weird that they didn't speak on Microsoft's comment about being the most powerful console ever. Like, they didn't touch it, they didn't try to challenge it, they just let it go.
That was interesting. I really thought they kind of didn't go too much into 4K. They didn't really talk about graphical prowess and power and fidelity. They kind of danced around the issue, and I think that is because now with Microsoft and the Scorpio, they've kind of been caught out a little bit, and I think that's why the whole conference was just a little bit subdued. And just a little bit flat. And, you had Mark Cerny up there for 15 minutes telling people about HDR, like telling, like from a scientific point of view, just going on and on about HDR. And it's like, well, the Scorpio does HDR, the Xbox One S does HDR. And then they
said that PS5 doesn't, right? It doesn't do HDR?
Well, at the end of the conference, they said all PlayStation 4s will now support
Oh, the
HDR
firmware patch,
via
right?
the firmware update.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, it's just HDR. Like, who cares? They made such a big deal about it. And they really didn't talk too much about 4K. And that's where I thought it was interesting, because I think
they didn't show that. Like, they showed HDR with the patches, like with Uncharted and that, but they didn't actually show 4K because it upscales.
That's right. That's what was really surprising, is that they really focused in a lot on HDR, which I just never really thought it was like a big feature, or I don't see people paying $399 for a brand new console just to get HDR. Like, I just don't see it happening. And the 4K is just not there, and they didn't even. And that's the interesting thing there is. With the 4K, it's like, does it actually do 4K? I don't think it does. It doesn't actually do native 4K. It's like they really didn't make much mention of that at all. So that's where I thought it was a bit surprising. It was a strange conference. I was surprised. Not at all what I expected. And I think it's because they're a bit uncertain. I think PlayStation here, like you said, they've gone first now. They've pushed it. And Microsoft are coming in with the Scorpio, which is going to be a much more powerful box.
It's weird though, because the specs for the Scorpio came out, so they had time to adjust, and they could have delayed this.
That's right, but they've chosen not to. They're going in with it, and it's just interesting. I'm just not sure. Yeah, like you said, who are these boxes aimed at now, and who's the target audience, and how's it all going to play out? So,
well, that's what I'm curious about, right? Because if you don't have a HDR 4K television, like, you're buying 1080p and better frame rates, like that's it, right? An upgraded hard drive because it's 1 gig instead of the 500.
That's right.
1000.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So if you don't have a 4K TV and you don't have an HDR TV, you can still get a PlayStation 4 Pro, and you'll get better frame rates. You'll get better graphics slightly, but what resolution are they really going to run at? You know, what kind of benefits are you going to see? I don't know. I think I just don't know at this stage. It's still a bit uncertain.
Don't you think this is kind of similar to the buy-in for the VR? Like, you had to buy the good graphics card, and now you have to buy the good TV just to get the benefits. Like, this is a big entry cost just to see, like, the bonuses of the Pro. Like, it's a massive cost.
Just to see a small improvement, and that's where I think they've been caught out here, because it's really just a half step. They've kind of basically just said, to me, the PlayStation 4 Pro almost seems like the Xbox One S, but just a little bit better. It's just because the Xbox One S does HDR. It does the 4K video streaming.
It has the 4K Blu-ray, which Sony doesn't have. 4K Blu-ray,
which I just cannot believe that I cannot. That to me was just one of the most amazing things, was that you've got Sony, who had a hand in creating the Blu-ray format.
They still have the label, don't they? They're part of the label company.
They're part of the consortium for Blu-ray. Yeah. They own movie studios. They have always been big pushers of media, physical media. Like with the PS3, it was all about Blu-ray. And now Microsoft, who have always been on the back foot, Xbox 360 was a DVD-only drive. Now they're the ones pushing the 4K Blu-ray, which I just couldn't believe it. I mean, that is a massive mistake from Sony.
Oversight, it is.
That is huge. It's huge. I just cannot believe that they didn't factor that in. Like, look, I know physical media is on its way out and things like that, but at the end of the day, you want to tout. They made mention of 4K Netflix. They made mention of 4K YouTube. So obviously they want to be pushing 4K video content.
How much is the inclusion raising the price of the console? Like, is it that extensive?
Well, I just saw a figure today. I think someone posted a link on NeoGAF that was saying that it might have only cost them $15 per unit
Wow,
to
that's
include
ridiculous,
a 4K Blu-ray drive. Now, 4K standalone 4K Blu-ray players
Yeah,
are something like $800-900.
yeah.
But an internal one on a PS4, I think, would have cost them $15 or something like that. That's just some report
That's
I saw.
ridiculous,
I don't know how accurate that is.
If
I
that's
just cannot
true.
believe it. I just cannot believe that they've been trumped by Microsoft here. I think Sony, it's a mistake. I think this might be like the first mistake of the generation for them. They've got the massive lead. They didn't need to do this iteration. And they haven't gone the whole hog.
It's a problem because like Sony have that 42 million installation base.
Massive lead.
Yeah, massive. So like the thing is, right, like the majority of their sales on the Pro are going to be upgrades and not people joining for the first time. So whereas like Microsoft are on like 22, 23, so their new system will be targeted towards PlayStation users. Like I don't understand why you wouldn't majorly bump up the specs to increase the performance. Like you're making 40 million people incrementally upgrade, and like where's the enticement? Like I don't know why people would do it.
I think their thinking is they want to have a $399 US dollars. Yeah. They always want to have a device at $399, and the Slim, obviously it's getting a bit older now, it's cheap to make. They can't justify it at $399 US anymore. So they need to have a $399 device. And for them, that's PS4 Pro. And that's fine if in another 2 years, they're just going to do it again, right? So the PS4 Pro in 2 years will become the PS4 Slim, Pro Slim or something like that. And there'll be a new version of the Pro, and they'll just keep incrementally upgrading them. That's fine, but I think the Scorpio is now like looming large over the.
Do you think they
Pro.
take a substantial number of this 40 million? Do you think they take 6-7 mil
of people switching over?
Yeah, PlayStation, or even people that stay on PlayStation but buy Xboxes as well, just purely because of the increase.
Yeah, look, the way I'm looking at it is they're not even gonna. I don't think there's many people that are going to upgrade. Just judging by some of the comments I've seen today, people aren't that excited by it at all. I think it's going to be, if you're looking for a PlayStation now and you've got the money, you'll probably get the Pro just because you can. If you've got the money, you might go for the Pro instead of the Slim. But if you really, really love graphics and you want the best power, you might be holding off for the Scorpio. Or you might go...
Yeah, the bottom line to me is that is like, if you've got the TV, then you'd buy it, right? Because it's a no-brainer. But how many people in Australia have a HDR 4K television? Like, it must be a low percentage.
It's a low percentage because I think the 4K TVs have slowly dropped in price and they've become quite affordable. But again, HDR is now like a new iteration on 4K.
Yeah, people haven't even agreed on HDR being an important feature. Like, consoles have to sell that idea to like TV manufacturers. Like, it's not a...
That's right. And like you said, it's almost like now you've got the 4K TV, you've got the HDR, but you would think the PlayStation Pro would be a no-brainer, but guess what? It doesn't have a 4K Blu-ray player.
That's so weird.
All of a sudden, it's not a no-brainer, right? Because people still do buy Blu-rays. And I was actually tempted, now that I saw a couple of the movies that have come out, there are 4K Blu-rays coming out. And I actually thought, like, wouldn't it be, I might actually get one of these when the Neo drops, because, a 4K movie must be what, hundreds of gigs, right? So
it's far bigger.
You're not gonna. I'm not gonna be able to stream it with our Australian internet. So
that's they talked about the Netflix and YouTube, the 4K content app that would be coming to like Australia.
That's right.
Like NBN will run that barely.
Barely. And the thing is, you don't even I've got the NVIDIA Shield that does 4K Netflix. That's the only, I think at this time, it's one of the only streaming boxes that's 4K rated.
Do they have like a recommendation for the upload? Like, it must be.
Look, I don't know, because it's an American device, so it doesn't even make mention.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, people do buy Blu-rays, and people like to have a few movies in their collection, and I just can't believe that it doesn't have it. Like, to me, that is just a massive, massive oversight. I just can't get my head around it. And then the second thing is, again, the games, the demos that they showed, could you really tell much of a difference? I mean, they showed Call of Duty. Horizon Zero Dawn looked amazing.
The hair, like, we know you and I with the Tomb Raider hair back in the day, like, we're good for that. Right. But, like, yeah, people on IGN, there was a video they're talking about impressions because they're down there playing it, and they were saying that they're playing Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare, and they said that the picture was clear, but there's no night and day difference between the two pictures. Like, it's very, very hard to judge.
That's right. I think it's just it's a bump up in power. It's a slight bump in power. So it's a little bit more of a push. And yeah, is that enough? I don't know. I think definitely a lot of people will get it, but I'm just not convinced. I think it's hard to justify at this stage. And it'll be interesting to see once the games actually start coming out, when sites like Digital Foundry start actually doing some analysis of this stuff. It'll be interesting to see. And you know, the other thing that I found interesting with the conferences, it kind of had that Nintendo. I remember the Nintendo Wii U press conference when they at E3 when they first launched. I remember, you know, they were trotting out like old third-party games, like, oh, here's Mass Effect and here's Batman Arkham Asylum or Arkham City or whatever, you know, like old games that were now coming to the Wii U. And this reminded me a little bit of that when they showed, like, you know, Infamous and what was the
Shadow
other
of
one?
Mordor. They showed.
Yeah, Shadow of Mordor.
That game's so old.
Like, it's just kind of that thing, like, oh, here's old games that we've bumped up. So it's like, you know, this has been the generation of remasters, and now it's like we're getting remasters of like last year's games again. Like, you know,
remasters.
Like, here's Shadow of Mordor again with, like, now running like how it ran on PC a year ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I'm surprised. And again, all they touted was HDR. Look at the HDR. Look how dynamic the lighting is and things like that. And it's like, well, they didn't talk about resolution. They didn't talk about frame rates.
The thing they kept really quiet about was VR. Like, you think that would be the device that would benefit most from the performance, and they didn't touch it at all.
Except that they did say the one line, which was, I think, something like, it's going to run twice as good on the Pro, something like that. And then they just
that's scary for the normal PlayStation.
That's scary. I think the PlayStation 4 will barely have the grunt for VR. I think it'll be like a very basic.
Because you can't just drop the frames. Like, you need the frames like with the VR. You can't drop that.
Yeah, and it's almost like, and that's another thing I was surprised. Like, I thought like they might show something like, you know, Drive Club VR or something like that running on the Neo or on the Pro. Like, here it is, you know, but they just kind of didn't make mention of it at all.
But you were kind of right in your article about the closer. Like, they showed him during the show, but there was no big bang to like holy crap.
That was another thing, you know. And they said, look, you know, we've got about half a dozen first party titles with patches incoming and a few sort of third party ones. You know, the most exciting thing for me was seeing Mass Effect. I think
that was great. I think
that might have actually been the first Mass Effect footage
that and the
come out.
Horizon Zero Dawn new footage. That was the two things.
Horizon Zero Dawn, that game looks amazing. That game, that's my game of the year for next year.
I hope it's Tomb Raider level, the first Tomb Raider. I hope it's like that level.
Of graphics or
of just like exploration, like mostly.
I think it's going to be more. I think it's going to be more. I think it's going to be way bigger, way bigger, less linear.
It's definitely Far Cry
missions. I think it's just going to be huge. It looks epic. I mean, if that game lives up to what we're seeing at the moment, that's just going to be amazing. And that's what I'm curious to see is like, what will be the difference between the PS4 and the PS4 Pro for games like that? Like, how much difference will there be in the graphics, you know?
Well, there'll be a point where games are noticeably different, but like, how far away is that? Is that a year and a half? Like,
but is it just going to be that on PS4 it runs at 1080p 30 and on the Pro it runs at 1080p 60? Like, is that all it's going to be?
Well, I mean, that's a big difference, but you'd assume there'd be differences.
It's a big difference. Like, it's a big difference, but you know, for $399.
No, yeah, that's a good point. Especially the television added on top.
Yeah, and well, yeah, and that's the other thing. So, and I guess if you've got a 1080p TV, you'll still get better frames. You'll still get a better frame rate, and you might still get some like a little bit better picture with the HDR or something like that. But if you have a 4K TV, what's it going to do then? Because for what they're saying, it's going to scale. So if you've got a 1080p TV, it'll just automatically switch into 1080p mode. If you've got a 4K TV, it's going to go into 4K mode. So if you've got a 4K TV, what's it going to run at? Is it just going to upscale?
I'd say so.
Which is
well, the old games aren't upscaling, right? They got HDR, but they're not 4K upscaling.
Well, I don't know if I think they might upscale. See, I don't know. I don't know if it's got a built-in. It's just not clear. It
wouldn't be automatic. I wouldn't think. It'd have to be a dev thing.
I don't know because from what they're saying, like with the Xbox One S, I think it can upscale. And it can upscale, and Blu-ray players can do that. For example, when you pop a DVD into a Blu-ray player, it'll upscale it for you. It'll look a bit better, like it'll smooth it out or do whatever it does. So
yeah, especially the pixel.
Upscale, so it won't be a native 4K resolution, and I just think the 4K is we're just not there yet. And I think
you can buy a new TV right now, 4K, and it won't have HDR, and you could spend $3,500 and then having to buy a HDR 4K television like 2 months later.
Not only that, but from what I understand, I think there's also different HDR standards.
Yeah, there's the HDR10 and the Dolby Digital thing.
That's right, the Dolby one, and the Dolby one's not supported by Xbox.
That's HDR10, yeah.
So
and that's not the standard on TVs, so you have to be real careful if you're buying one.
Yeah, it's all a little bit iffy, and that's one thing. But I think also the other thing is I think the 4K gaming's just not there, and I think even with the Microsoft Scorpio, when they started questioning Phil Spencer after the announcement, he was a little bit iffy as well, because from what even Microsoft was saying, they were pretty much giving the hint like the Scorpio will be to the Xbox One what the Neo or PS4 Pro is to the PlayStation 4, as in, even though it's going to be super powerful and stuff, I don't think it's going to be like a 4K 60 frames a second box.
Yeah, well, people have to remember the Xbox is behind the specs of the PlayStation, so they got some big ground to cover.
The Xbox is, but from what the specs of the Scorpio look like, it's going to be way more powerful than the Pro. But even then, I don't think it's going to be doing anything different to the Pro, in the sense that it's just going to be kind of slightly incrementing the graphics and the frames. It's not going to be even with its power, it's not going to be doing native 4K.
Do you think Microsoft will run into problems with alienating the user base with like games, because the difference in the power between the two is so much different?
I don't think so, because I think it's going to be a similar case with what PS4 and PS4 Pro are doing, and I think it's just like with the architecture that they've got now, it's going to be a lot like PC, where it's just going to scale. You would think
there'll be just options like graphic options.
X86. Yeah, I think they're just going to have some scaling options there, and PC games are pretty good at auto adjusting to your graphics card and sort of running at what they need to. And I think maybe PS4 and Xbox games will start going down that path where it'll just sort of scale. And if you pop it into a Neo, it's going to crank it up to 1080p 60. And if you've got a PS4, it'll drop it down to 30. Or if it's already 1080p 60 on the PS4, it might go to 2K 30 or whatever, because it's not going to go to 4K. Can't do it. So it's going to be interesting. But then, you've got with multiplayer, they're not going to allow games to have different frame rates and things like that to keep it even on multiplayer.
Imagine playing Uncharted 4, whatever it is, right? 60 frames in single player, and then going online and having to play at 30. Like, that is ridiculous.
This is the thing. So it's like they want to move forward, but they're being held back by not wanting to alienate the existing user base.
And because they have to sell that. They have to sell it.
And and they kept pointing out, like, oh, this is not a new generation. This is not a generation change. So they're kind of like, they're getting held back, but they also don't want to push it too far forward. And I think they kind of don't know how to market it.
No, that's the thing, right? It's like mobile phones have been doing it for years. People are used to it. There could be a backlash from this. Like,
there could be, or I think it could just sort of be
fizzle
fine.
out.
I think it could just fizzle out, and slowly people will just start buying the PS4 Pro, because they'll be, like you said, with phones, when you go to buy a phone, now the iPhone 7 is going to come out. The 6 will still be on the market, and some people will go for the 6, some people will go for the 7, and I think the PS4 will be like that as well. Some people will go for the Pro, some people will go for the PS4. All the games are going to work.
Yeah.
Some people will have slightly better graphics, but not too much. And then in another couple of years, there'll be another iteration, and it's just kind of going to go like that. And that's how they're trying to position it. And I think eventually over time, maybe that'll take hold. I think people are just kind of at the moment, this is new for gamers. So there's a little bit of feeling out and a bit of backlash there.
You think the short distance between the VR release and the Pro release, do you think that affects sales of either? Like, do you think most people are going out and buying both, or?
Yeah, I think there always will be some, because you've got a lot of PlayStation fanboys, you've got a lot of hardcore gamers, people with money, they're going to drop
disposable income.
Again, I saw a lot of people saying, look, I now have to get a 4K TV, I have to get a Pro
VR.
and a VR.
Yeah.
You're looking at $3 or $4 grand.
Yeah, easily.
I think some people will, because they always want to have the latest. But the other thing for me is that VR, it has just fallen off the face of the earth.
If you
know,
right now,
that's just not PlayStation.
Right now, you could get one for free, VR or the Pro. What would you get?
Oh, look, I'd probably take the Pro. I'd take the Pro, because I'm that kind of person that if you said, look, you can run these games with slightly better frames and
the offer of the frames,
so I would take that, especially because going forward, you know that it's going to get to the point where games are going to start to struggle on the PS4, and that's where the PS Pro will come into it. So I'll take that.
Credible for us to say that with new tech. Like, VR is like supposed to be exciting and new,
and that's the thing. I think it's just fallen off the face of the planet, and that's just not PlayStation. I think that's Oculus and the Vive. It's dead. I think the technology is good. The technology is strong. But there was just so much hype pre-launch, and after it launched, it just died. It died.
You think that
time, and
there's a little problem in Australia though, because like we hear about it, but we never get to see it. Like you have to book for it, like in Westfield.
But even then, I just think there's no market for it at this stage, because there's no killer app, and just even looking at it from what's happening in the States, I think it's just dead.
It's just dying.
There's no games. The tech is there, and it works awesome, but it's one of those things where like you show it to people, and it's one of those things when you're demoing it in public, people try it and they're amazed. They're like, this is awesome. They love it.
Longevity.
You show it to the public. But if you ask those people, like, do you want to buy one and take it home and use it every day? They'd be like, no. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things, like when you go to a shopping mall or a shopping center and you demo it, people will go crazy. People will line up and, they'll go on that roller coaster VR app or the Shark Tank one, and they'll be blown away. They'll be blown away by it. But then if you said, $5.99, do you want to buy one? I don't think anybody would want to buy one, because you've seen the demo. Cool. Done. Like, it's end of story. Like, you're not gonna play it anymore. That's it. So I think it's one of those cool things, but I don't think anyone wants one, and the games aren't there. And
it's going to take a full experience, not just a tech demo or like a.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's just fallen off the face of the earth. Yeah. So PlayStation has kind of almost like been a bit slow to release the VR, because Oculus and Vive got in with the hype. They sold it to the early adopters, and now it's kind of dead for them as well. So
I think PlayStation are hoping that the not having to buy the $1,500 graphics card makes people jump on.
Well, that's right, and it's cheaper entry point anyway, and it just plugs straight into your PlayStation. I think
it'll be interesting how it sells.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see, but look, I have no interest in it at all. To tell you the truth, I can't see myself like that Batman Arkham VR, whatever. Not interested. It's the Final Fantasy one just looks like.
I said to you off cam, the only thing I'm interested in is Resident Evil. That's it. The only thing.
Yeah, and again, like with that Resident Evil, we don't even know what it is at this stage, because that demo that they showed is kind of like not like the game. It's one of those kind of
it's like stages, like different. Yeah,
that's right. So look, I don't know what's going to happen to that, but yeah, I mean, just getting back on PlayStation, I mean, just overall thoughts and just to sum it up, what do you reckon? Like, how do you walk away from that, and what do you think?
There's like a lot of like question marks. Like, I don't understand the drive being absent. I don't understand the timing with like the VR. It's it's difficult to really explain why someone would go out and purchase one right now unless you've got the HDR 4K television, which in Australia it's probably 5% of the population. Honestly, it's like very little.
That's right.
And what we've seen hasn't been enough. Like it's like the VR. You've got to see it for yourself. Like in Harvey Norman, you walk into EB and you see the difference side by side. Until you see that and get sold on it, I don't see the point of it. I really don't.
Yeah. I don't. Like I said, unless you got the 4K TV or unless you've just got the money to spend and you're one of those people that if you're going to buy something, you go, well, I might as well buy the future-proof one, right?
Yeah.
And you've got the money, you go, look, I'll get the Pro. But for people for the 40 million that have PlayStation 4s, I can't see too many changing. Why would you? And like you said, they haven't shown me anything that's going to blow me away at this stage. Like Shadow of Mordor, great. Yeah. I mean, no thanks. I'm not interested. That was a good game. I really enjoyed it, but I kind of really don't want to play it again. And
even Uncharted 4 that looks incredible. Like how much is HDR going to change that experience? Like.
And again, so all they showed was the HDR. They didn't say, "Oh, check it out," that we've increased the fidelity or we've increased the resolution or anything like that. So, like you said, I just walk away a bit confused and it just felt a bit flat from Sony. And they've been knocking it out of the park every single time this generation, and this is the first time where you're kind of looking at it and you're going, yeah, okay, it's cool. I mean, it's one of those things where it just kind of, I think it just makes sense. Like you said, with phones, they just kind of refresh the models and they bump it up a little bit. And that's what they're doing here. They're trying to change the game, I guess, by just saying, look, every couple of years, we're just going to kind of bump it up and keep it at that same $399 price point. So every couple of years, there'll be a new one. It's always going to be $399 and it's always going to be the latest and the greatest. You don't have to get it straight away, but, eventually it'll drop in price a little bit as well, and that'll become the default until the new one comes out. So, but like you said, is it going to, take off? I don't think so, but I think long term, they might be onto the right strategy here. We'll just have to wait and see.
I just think a better conference would have changed the mood of this podcast. Like they didn't sell it well. Like they're used to punching, they're counter punching. Like Microsoft say DRM, we say no DRM. There's nothing to counter, and they've got to go out on their own, and they've like stumbled for the first time in probably 3 years, in my opinion.
They've stumbled, and I think if Microsoft hadn't announced anything, you might be like, yeah,
it'd be different.
Let's see what Microsoft does. But now that the Scorpio's looming as well,
the Scorpio specs have killed this. Like, they really have.
Yeah. Look, I've already got a PS4, so now I'm thinking for $5.50 Australian or whatever it is, $5.99, maybe I'll wait and get the Scorpio, and that way I've got an Xbox and a PlayStation. Do you know what I mean? And that way I can play the Gears of War 4 and Halo 6 when it comes out and whatever else comes out from Microsoft. And all the third-party games are probably going to look a little bit better on the Microsoft one then. So, it's just going to be so interesting to see how it plays out from here. I'm curious to see how it's going to go over the next few months. I really am. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely Microsoft's moves, but we can end it there unless you got anything else to quickly talk about.
I think that's it. We've got it all off our chest.
We got the first episode done and in the vault.
The first episode done. It's in the bag, and let's see how we go from here.
Thanks for joining me, Ed, and we
Alrighty, man.
might be back next week depending what happens.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be back next week probably. Bye.
Stay tuned. Bye.